History teaches us many harsh lessons about the power of nature and the folly of human pride. But no story illustrates this terrifying combination better than the destruction of St. This is the true story of a beautiful city that was warned of its impending doom, but refused to listen, and of a lone prisoner who was saved from the apocalypse by the very walls of his dungeon. Our story begins in 1902 on the French Caribbean island of Martinique. Its capital city, Saint-Pierre, was a jewel. It was known as the Paris of the Caribbean. It was a city of culture, wealth, and elegance, with theaters, cafes, and a magnificent harbor. Looming over this vibrant city was the beautiful, green volcano mountain. For decades, the volcano had been dormant. It was seen as a picturesque backdrop, not a threat. In April of 1902, that perception began to change. Mount started to awaken. Minor eruptions sent clouds of ash raining down on the city, covering it in a fine gray dust. The smell of sulfur filled the air. Small earthquakes trembled beneath the citizens' feet. Animals grew restless. A massive migration of ants and venomous snakes fled the mountain, invading the city. Fear began to spread among the 30,000 residents of St. The mountain was clearly angry. Many people from the countryside flocked into the city, believing it to be safer. A fatal mistake, but the city's leaders had a problem. An important election was scheduled for May 10th. The governor of the island, Louis Motet, and the city's powerful elite were worried. They feared that a mass evacuation would disrupt the election and hurt their political chances. They decided to downplay the danger. They put politics and profit ahead of people's lives. They appointed a scientific commission which quickly declared that there was no immediate danger. The city's leading newspaper, owned by a powerful industrialist, published reassuring headlines. It called the fears absurd and told the people of Saint-Pierre to remain calm and stay put. To enforce this, soldiers were positioned on the roads leading out of the city to prevent anyone from leaving. The population was effectively trapped, convinced by their leaders that the threat was imaginary. On May 5th, the volcano gave its final, terrible warning. A superheated volcanic mudflow known as a lahar roared down the mountain at incredible speed. It completely buried a sugar mill on the coast, killing over 24 people instantly. This horrifying event should have triggered an immediate evacuation, but it did not. The authorities continued to insist that the city itself was safe from harm. Only 3 days remained. The morning of May 8, 1902, was Ascension Day, a major public holiday. The city was calm. The sky was clear. But inside Mount, the pressure was reaching its breaking point. At approximately 7:52 a.m., the volcano exploded, but it was not a typical eruption of lava. The side of the volcano blew open, unleashing a pyroclastic flow, a superheated cloud of gas, ash, and rock. This is the most destructive force in nature. It was over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and it moved at the speed of a hurricane. The cloud hugged the ground, roaring down the mountain directly towards the sleeping city of Saint-Pierre. It struck the city with the force of dozens of atomic bombs. The destruction was instantaneous. Stone buildings were vaporized. Ships in the harbor exploded and sank. In less than 3 minutes, the entire city of Saint-Pierre was erased from the earth. 30,000 people, men, women, and children were killed almost instantly. It was one of the deadliest volcanic eruptions in all of human history. When rescue ships arrived, they found a smoldering, silent landscape of death and ruin. They found no survivors. The Paris of the Caribbean had become a modern-day Pompeii. For days, they searched the ruins, but found only charred bodies and devastation. Then, 4 days after the eruption, they heard a faint cry coming from the ruins of the city jail. Buried deep beneath the rubble, they found a small, stone structure, still intact. It was a dungeon, a small windowless, bomb-proof cell, partially underground, and inside, they found a man. He was horribly burned, but he was alive. His name was Ludger Silberus. He was a 27-year-old manual laborer. He had been thrown in jail a day before the eruption for getting into a drunken brawl. He was locked away in solitary confinement, in the worst cell in the prison. He said on the morning of the eruption, it grew very dark. And it was this punishment that had saved his life. He later described his experience. Hot air and fine ash came in through the small grate in his door, burning him severely. The heat was so intense, he had to urinate on his own clothes and stuffed them in the grate to survive. For 4 days, he sat in total darkness, in agony from his burns, with no idea what had happened. He was the only person in the city of Saint-Pierre to survive the main blast. There was one other known survivor, a man on the very edge of the city who escaped with terrible burns. But Ludger Silberus was the man at the heart of the inferno, the man who lived through Doomsday. His story became a global sensation. He was pardoned for his minor crime. He was soon hired by Barnum and Bailey's circus, touring America as a living attraction. He was billed as the man who lived through Doomsday, and the lone survivor of He would sit in a replica of his prison cell, telling audiences his incredible story of survival. The destruction of Saint-Pierre stands as a tragic and powerful cautionary tale. They were victims of the volcano, but also of human folly. It's a lesson about the devastating power of nature and the fatal arrogance of leaders who refuse to listen. The 30,000 people of that city did not have to die, and Ludger Silberus, the troublemaker, the prisoner, became the sole witness to their final moments. His prison cell, which was meant to punish him, became his unlikely savior, a stone tomb that protected him from the fires of a real-life apocalypse.